how much of your success do you attribute to having really audacious goals, or versus just not being focused on the short term, money coming in, or I don't know, investors?
Unfortunately, one does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company, the most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it, and have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company, because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
The number one rule for success is you have to love what you do. You have to love the process of the thing that you are doing. I've studied more successful people than most people. And the work that I've done on my YouTube channel, my website before that, that's been 20 years. When did I start doing this? It was 22 when I started teaching how you can model success for your own success, right? That was through my website. And I'm 41 and a half now. So almost 20 years of doing this. 20 years of studying the most successful people and trying to dissect their lessons and bring them out for you to enjoy. And the number one rule that I found over and over and over and over and over again, the people who achieve at the highest levels, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're an inventor, you're an athlete, you are a musician, you are an artist, the number one rule is that you love the thing, the actual thing, not just the results of what you get, not just accomplishing the gold medal or getting the thing that's on your dream board, getting that house or getting that car, not that. The actual work, so that it doesn't feel like work. You know, there's that old expression of find something you love and you never work a day in your life. And it's really true. I look at my calendar and I see what I've got to do every day. I've got to make videos. It doesn't feel like work. You know, I don't look at this like, how lucky am I to be able to make videos in the car, and that's my work day, right? A lot of people would step into my life and hate this. Great. I would step into a lot of people's lives and hate that too. That's the challenge. When you're stepping into somebody else's life, or you're helping somebody else build their dream, and you don't actually like the process of what you're doing, you're not going to be happy, first of all, and you're not going to be successful either. You're always going to know that you're capable of more, doing something bigger, something better, and as long as you're stuck with your foot on the brake, you're going to know you're capable of more and just being too afraid to go chase down that potential. So the number one rule for success is you have to love what you're doing. I was doing a presentation yesterday, Brendan Burchard's Influencer Summit, and it's probably the biggest event every year for people who want to become influencers, thought leaders, experts, get their message out to the world. You know, my kind of people. You got a message, you want to share it with the world? Let's go. I'm trying to solve the world's biggest problem, and I can't reach everybody, but you can. Like, you can reach people that I can't reach with your message, and so I love being able to try to help spread the techniques, the strategies, the motivation as well, the belief that you have a powerful voice and getting that out there to the world. So yesterday, I'm doing my 1 hour talk with Brendan, and I shared my graphic of my growth over the years, and it was really slow growth at the beginning, very little results, 60 subscribers or whatever to 100 subscribers. I'm on year 5 and I'm still in the 4 figures of subscribers. And it took a long time for me to get out of my own way. It took a long time for me to get comfortable in front of the camera. It took a long time for me to feel like my story meant anything, had any kind of value. Like, why do you want to learn from me when you could learn from Oprah or Elon Musk or Bill Gates or whoever the person is? It took a long time. And we've done now, I don't know how many thousands of videos. We're over 10,000 videos that we've made. And so somebody asked him, well, like, how do you keep going? How did you keep going when you had no results at the beginning, when you weren't becoming famous or you weren't getting a lot of feedback or recognition? And how did you make so many videos so consistently, right? If you average that out, that's over 1,000 videos a year. How did we make over 1,000 videos a year? It sounds crazy just thinking about that. That's 3 videos a day, every day for 12 years. That's pretty crazy. How do you maintain that level of consistency and not burn out, where some people are burning out after 6 months of being on YouTube? Well, I love what I did, right? I always focused on who I was serving instead of who I wasn't, because the who you're not serving game never ends. If my main channel has 3 million subscribers, why doesn't it have 4 or 5 or 7 or 10 or 40, right? That game is never ending. But if you focus on who you are serving, who you are helping, who is paying attention, who is valuing from the products, services, content you're creating, it makes you feel better. Because focus on who you're not serving puts you in a position of lack, right? Of like, you're not good enough, people don't care, and it starts to take a knock on your self-worth. But when you focus on who you're actually helping and serving, and that somebody got value from your message today, your product, your service today, it gives you extra motivation to keep going. Like, how do you persevere? It's because you feel like you're doing something that matters. If you woke up and felt like today didn't matter, you're not likely to stay very consistent, right? It's like, if nobody's gonna watch, nobody's gonna care, nobody's gonna buy my thing, well, what reason do you have to get up and go work on that thing? You're probably gonna quit. But when you feel like it matters, even if it's to one person, that what you're going to make today will matter, will mean something to even just one person. If you actually felt that, you're going to show up completely differently than if you felt like it didn't matter. So I always focus on who I was serving instead of who I wasn't. And then the second part of that was I actually enjoy the process of doing it. So when I see filming day on my calendar, or when I see interview day on my calendar, it's not work. It's not like, oh, okay, I got to go to work and then I'm going to have fun afterwards. When I get asked that on podcast, how many hours do you work? Or how do you stay so consistent on the content? I respond with, well, I'm here talking to you on your show. Is this work for you? Because it's not work for me. This is fun for me. It might be considered work, I guess, it's my business. It's part of business time, but it doesn't feel like work. The days fly by because I'm enjoying the actual work of what's going on. I enjoy the process. And I think that's the key. And when you find the people who've had tremendous success, you'll find that they actually enjoy the thing that they're doing and that the days fly by. And it's a good sign when it's not, like if your day is not flying by, if you're stuck and you're struggling doing something, chances are that's the wrong thing for you. That's the thing that you need to give up on as soon as possible. And maybe that means you need to quit on the whole business. Like if the whole business is giving nothing but stress and problems and you don't want to go in and you don't want to work on it anymore, maybe you picked the wrong business. Maybe you did what most people do, is they pick an opportunity just because they think it's a hot business, because it's a trending industry to be in for this year. But if you don't actually ever like the thing, you're going to quit on it, and you should quit on it so you can go find something that you actually love. Right? So if you pick the business just for the opportunity, because you think you're going to make a quick buck, you're going to hate your life. Get out of it ASAP. Or it might mean there's just little bits inside the business that you don't want to do. and maybe you have to do it, and you have to do it for now until you can afford to hire someone to do it. Or maybe it just doesn't have to get done. Maybe that's not required. There's some things that have to get done that you might not enjoy, right? Filing taxes. Most people don't enjoy filing taxes. Most entrepreneurs that I've met do not enjoy filing taxes as a part of their business. But if you don't want to be in trouble with the government, then you have to file your taxes. It's an important part of being an entrepreneur. And so maybe at the beginning you do it yourself, but as quickly as you can, you want to hand that off to somebody else to do. Let them do it because they love it and they're great at it, and it allows you more time, but also just mental energy, because it's not just about the hours worked. When you are working on something that you do not enjoy doing at all, that 2 hours feels like 20 hours. Can you relate? Like doing 2 hours of work that you hate feels like it took an entire week to do of mental energy, versus when you're actually having fun doing it and it doesn't feel like work, you could keep going and you're producing so much and time just seems to fly by. So use that negative time as a filter. So when you feel that way, that you're not happy, you look at your calendar and you're not happy about what's coming up, that's a great time for the awareness to shift. Something needs to shift. If you look at your calendar, you can do this homework right now. Look at your calendar, see what's coming up in the next 2 weeks. Is it exciting for you? Are you pumped to go do it? Or are you dreading it or apathetic towards it? Like you could take it or you could leave it. And if there's nothing that's exciting in your calendar, nothing that scares you in your calendar in a good way, like it's growth opportunity, then you need to add something in. And if you're constantly dreading or hating the stuff that is in your calendar, you need to get out of that, because you will never win doing work that you hate. People say that, do whatever it takes. You won't. Not consistently, not for a sustained period of time. You could do anything in a short amount of time, but over years, decades, you won't. You won't stay consistent on doing something that you hate. You'll never win because you're going up against people who love it. Whatever market you're in, if you don't love it, and it's just a strategy for you, and somebody else, your competition, loves it. They live it, they eat it, they breathe it, they bleed it, they love it. That's them. And for you, it's just a strategy. And you hate it. Who do you think's going to win in the long term? It's not going to be you. But meanwhile, there is something you could dive into that you could love. The actual work, not just the results, but the actual work. And you have to find it. I've studied so many successful people over the almost 20 years now, 19 and a half years of doing this. And the reason why I went to non-entrepreneurs as well was because it's all the same lessons. That success in athletics and success in music and success in art and success in every field, it still comes down to you need to love the process, love the work. And if that's you and you love what you're doing, you have to keep going and find a way to make it work, or you regret giving up on it. And if you're the opposite and you hate what you're doing and you think it's good strategy, the best strategy is to get out and go find something that you love, because that's where you will win. Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
The overall objective of Tesla is really what set of actions can we take to accelerate the advent of sustainable production and consumption of energy. I think the sort of the way I would assess the historic good of Tesla is in terms of how many years of acceleration was it, and if we can accelerate sustainable energy by 10 years, I would consider that to be a great success. Even if it was only 5 years, that would still be pretty good. That's the overarching optimization. First of all, you don't need college to learn stuff, okay? Everything is available basically for free. You can learn anything you want for free. It is not a question of learning. There is a value that colleges have, which is like, seeing whether can somebody work hard at something, including a bunch of sort of annoying homework assignments, and still do their homework assignments and kind of soldier through and get it done. That's like the main value of college. And then also, if you probably want to hang around with a bunch of people your own age for a while instead of going right into the workforce. So I think colleges are basically for fun and to prove you can do your chores, but they're not for learning. The real way I think you actually achieve intellectual property protection is by innovating fast enough. If your rate of innovation is high, then you don't need to worry about protecting the IP because other companies will be copying something that you did years ago. And that's fine. Just make sure your rate of innovation is fast. Speed of innovation is what matters. And I do say this to my teams quite a lot, that innovation per unit time, as I go innovation per year, if you want to say it, is what matters, not innovation absent time. Because if you wanted to make, say, 100% improvement in something, and that took 100 years or 1 year, that's radically different. So it's like, what is your rate of innovation? That matters. And is the rate of innovation, is that accelerating or decelerating? And a weird thing happens when companies get big is that most companies or organizations, the bigger they get, they tend to get less innovative. Not just less innovative on a per person basis, but less innovative in the absolute. And I think this is probably because the incentive structure is not there for innovation. It's not enough to use words to encourage innovation. The incentive structure must be aligned with that. That's fundamental.
You need to work, depending upon how well you want to do, and particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night, 7 days a week, all the time. And I sort of briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she had to sleep in the office. So work hard, every waking hour. That's the thing I would say particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, say okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company.
I came to the conclusion that my initial premise was wrong. That in fact, there's a great deal of will. There's not such a shortage, but people don't think there's a way, and that if people thought there was a way, or at least something that wouldn't break the federal budget, then people would support it. Which, in retrospect, I think is actually kind of obvious, because the United States is a distillation of the human spirit of exploration. People came here from other places. There's no nation that's more a nation of explorers than the United States. But people need to believe that it's possible, and that it's not. They don't have to give up healthcare or something important.
Right.
It's got to be that's important. So I thought, okay, well, then it's not a question of will. It's a question of showing that there's a way. In the beginning, nobody wanted a Tesla. I can tell you that. When we made the original sort of roadster sports car, people were like, well, why would I want an electric car? My gasoline car works fine. I'm like, no, electric car is better. I should try it. And it was hard to get people to do a test drive. First of all, nobody knew who we were. I never heard of this company. And I'm like, yeah, we're named after Nikola Tesla. You know that guy? Nope. So for sure we were doing push in the beginning because people said there was no one telling us that they wanted an electric car. So it was not out of like, it was like lots of people coming up to me saying, hey, I really want an electric car. I heard that 0 times. So people were like, it's like, man, we're going to make an electric car and show that these things can be good. And then people will want them. It's like, I think it was like Henry Ford said, like when we talk about the Model T, it's like if you asked the public what they wanted, they'd say a faster horse. Mm-hmm. So if you did like a big survey and said, hey, public, before automobiles, what would you like? It's like, well, I'd like my horse to go 3 miles an hour faster and eat less food and, be stronger and live longer and that kind of thing. There'll all be basically a bunch of incremental improvements on horse. Because people, when you say like, well, what about an automobile, like car that drives itself? Like, what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. But when you actually make an automobile and give it to people and say, okay, now this is a horse where you can keep it in the barn, and if you leave for a month, it's still alive. Yeah. So carry more weight than a horse and go further and that kind of thing. So anyway, it's like when it's a radically new product, people don't know that they want it because it's just not in their scope. I think when they first started making TVs, they did a nationwide survey. I think this might have been like 46 or 48. It was like a famous nationwide survey. Will you ever buy a TV? Now, it was like 96% of respondents said no. Some crazy number. Like basically everyone's like, would you buy a TV? And maybe they put a price in there or something, I don't know. But it was famously, almost everyone said they would not buy a TV, but they didn't know what they were talking about.
So the big game-changing stuff at the beginning is a company push kind of a thing most of the time, but then changes to the product over time can be a lot more customer pull kind of a focus.
Yeah, changes to the product over time can be incremental changes. Then customers can certainly tell you, it's good to get customer feedback to say, how can we improve the product? And once they're using it, they can say, okay, I like this thing about it, I don't like this other thing, and then we can improve the product over time. Customer feedback after they have the fundamental thing is great.
I think failure is bad. I don't think it's good. But if something's important enough, then you do it even though the risk of failure is high. And so I think my advice if somebody wants to start a company is they should bear in mind that the most likely outcome is that it's not going to work. And they should reconcile themselves to that strong possibility. And they should only do it if they feel that they are really compelled to do it. Right. Because it's going to, the way starting a company works is like usually in the very beginning it's kind of fun, and then it's really hellish for a number of years.
You talked about chewing glass.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine who's a successful entrepreneur, and started actually his career around the same time as I did, and he has a good phrase. His name's Billy. He said, "Yeah, starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss," and you agree with that? Generally true. Yeah. And if you don't eat the glass, you're not going to be successful.
Well, we have a lot of good people at SpaceX. That a lot of really talented people. In fact, I wonder, like sometimes, how we can make use of their talents in the best way, because I think we're often not using their talents in the best way. Yeah, but
to the point of the question that was just asked, I want to make sure Tesla recruiting does not have anything that says requires university, because that's absurd. But there is a requirement of evidence of exceptional ability. Like, you just can't, if you're trying to do something exceptional, they must have evidence of exceptional ability. I don't consider going to college evidence of exceptional ability. In fact, ideally, you dropped out and did something. I mean, obviously, look at, like, Gates is a pretty smart guy, he dropped out. Jobs is pretty smart, he dropped out. Larry Ellison, smart guy, he dropped out. I'm like, obviously not needed.
So,
did Shakespeare even go to college? Probably not. I think of these things as just, there's a certain amount of time, and within that time, you want the best net outcome. So for all the set of actions that you can do, there's going to be some of which will fail, some of which will succeed, and you want the net useful output of your set of actions to be the highest. I'm going to use a baseball analogy. Baseball, they don't let you just sit there and wait for the perfect pitch until you get a real easy one. They can give you 3 shots, and on the third one, they say, okay, and they get off they go back to put somebody else up there. So your 3 strikes on the baseball, not on bat anymore. So what you're really looking for is, like, what's the batting average? How you doing on score, and just there's going to be some amount of failure, but you want your net output, net useful output to be maximized. Failure is essentially irrelevant unless it is catastrophic.
Don't just follow the trend. So you may have heard me say that it's good to think in terms of the physics approach of first principles, which is, rather than reasoning by analogy, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths you can imagine, and you reason up from there. And this is a good way to figure out if something really makes sense, or if it's just what everybody else is doing. It's hard to think that way. You can't think that way about everything. It takes a lot of effort. But if you're trying to do something new, it's the best way to think. And that framework was developed by physicists to figure out counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics. So it's really a powerful method.
I believe in the scientific method, and one should have a healthy skepticism of things in general, and if you approach things from a scientific standpoint, you always look at things probabilistically, not definitively. And so I think a lot of times, if somebody's a skeptic in the science community, what they're really saying is that they're not sure that it's 100% certain that this is the case. But that's not the point. The point is is look at it from the other side. So what do you think the percentage chance is of this being catastrophic for some meaningful percentage of the Earth's population? Is it greater than 1%? Is it even 1%? If it is even 1%, why are we running this experiment?
If you're creating a company, or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing, that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So do everything you can to gather great people if you're creating a company.
Well, I mean, if you think about a company is a group of people that are organized to create a product or service. That's what a company is. So in order to create such a thing, you have to convince others to join you in your effort. And so they have to be convinced that it's a sensible thing, that there's at least some reasonable chance of success, and if there is success, that the reward will be commensurate with the effort involved. So I think that's getting people to believe in what you're doing and in you is important. So in the beginning, there will be few people who believe in you or in what you're doing, but then over time, as you make progress, the evidence will build, and more people will believe in what you're doing. So I think it's a good idea when creating a company to have a demonstration, or if it's a product, to have like a good mock-up, or if it's software, to have good demoware, or to be able to sketch something so that people can really envision what it's about. Try to get to that point as soon as possible, and then iterate to make it as real as possible, as fast as possible.
If you're going to try something innovative, then you're in unexplored territories, so that odds that something will go wrong are pretty high. It's only if you try to do something that is already well understood that there's little chance of failure, but then it will not be interesting or innovative. For sure, uncharted territory will result in failures necessarily. Otherwise, you're not trying hard enough.
Did you surround yourself with mentors? Who did you look to for advice?
I read a lot of books and talked to lots of people. I didn't have any one person who was a mentor, but I always look for feedback from people around me, and feedback from an historical context, which is books basically.
And so you want to have a competitive situation where it's truly competitive, where companies aren't gaming the system, and then where the rules are set correctly, and then you need to be on the alert for regulatory capture, where the referees are in fact captured by the players, which is and the players should not control the referees.
You're CEO of 2 companies. You're chairman of Solar City. Talk about time management. How on earth do you do this?
Well,
do you get any sleep?
Sometimes not enough. Sleep is really great, because I find if I don't get enough sleep, then I'm quite grumpy. Obviously, I think most people are that way. And also, I try to sort of figure out what's the right amount of sleep, because I found I could drop below a certain threshold of sleep, and although I'd be awake more hours and I could sustain it, I would get less done because my mental acuity would be affected. So I found generally the right number for me is around 6 to 6.5 hours on average per night.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Right. And any other tips
That is
on...
an average, though.
Right. Any other tips on just managing to run 2 companies simultaneously? Do you find, I know you're up here Monday, Tuesday. Is it all Tesla when you're up in Silicon Valley, and all SpaceX Wednesday, Thursday?
Having a having a smartphone is incredibly helpful, because that means you can do email during interstitial periods. Like if you're in a car, you're walking, in the bathroom, everywhere. You can do email practically when you're awake. So that's really helpful to have email for SpaceX and Tesla integrated on my phone. Then it's just you have to apply a lot of hours to actually working. So the way I generally do it is I'll be working at SpaceX on Monday, and then Monday night fly to the Bay Area, spend Tuesday and Wednesday in the Bay Area, then at Tesla, and then fly back on Wednesday night, spend Thursday and Friday at SpaceX. In the last several months, then I would fly back here on a Saturday, and either spend Saturday and Sunday at Tesla, or spend Saturday at Tesla and Sunday at SpaceX.
And generally, you want to embark on something, it's desirable to figure out if success is at least one of the possibilities.
Right, exactly.
Because for sure failure is one of the possibilities.
Yes.
But ideally you want to try to bracket it and say success is in the envelope of outcomes.
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite sure if that was the case. I mean, I think success on an academic level would have been quite likely because you can publish some useless paper, and most papers are pretty useless.
We have a few. Don't take offense. Sorry.
I mean,
we have
how many PhD papers are actually used by someone ever? I mean,
no, that's a good point.
Percentage-wise, it's not good.
Yeah.
So it could have been one of those outcomes where you add some leaves to the tree of knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that leaf is nope, it's not possible.
Right.
Like,
right.
there goes 7 years of my life. So that was one path, and I was prepared to do that. But then the internet came along, and it's like, okay, the internet. I'm pretty sure success is one of the possible outcomes, and it seemed like I could either do a PhD and watch the internet happen, or I could participate and help build it in some fashion. Like I just couldn't stand the idea of watching it happen.
Yeah, yeah.
So so I decided to put things on hold and start an internet company. And that was kind of we worked on internet, like publishing software, maps and directions, Yellow Pages, kind of things.
So, first of all, when we interview people, we do ask for some evidence of exceptional ability, which in most cases includes innovation. This is not to say that everyone needs to be innovative. But we certainly need those that are doing advanced engineering to be innovative. And ideally, everyone is at least to some degree innovative. So at the interview point, we select for people who want to create new technology, and then the incentive structure is set up such that innovation is rewarded. Making mistakes along the way does not come with a big penalty. But failure to try to innovate at all comes with a big penalty. You'll be fired.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The carrot and stick.
Yes.
That's the stick.
If you don't even try, or somebody doesn't even try to innovate, or their innovation aspirations are not very good, then they will no longer be at the company.
I don't have a mentor per se, although I try to get feedback from as many people as possible. So I have like friends, and I ask them to, what they think of this, that, and the other thing. And, as mentioned, Larry Page is a good friend of mine, value his advice a lot. And I have many other good friends. And so I think it's good to solicit feedback, and particularly negative feedback, actually, because, obviously people don't love the idea of giving you negative feedback, unless it's like some, on blogs, they do that. I mean, it started out, I actually had one of the very, very first Twitter accounts, like when it was like less than 10,000 people, and then everyone was tweeting at me like what kind of latte they had at Starbucks, and I'm like, well, this seems like the silliest thing ever. So I deleted my Twitter account, and then someone else took it over and started tweeting in my name. And then a couple of friends of mine, Will Lee and Jason Calacanis, they both said, hey, you should really use Twitter to get your message out. And also somebody's tweeting in your name and they're saying crazy things. So I was like, I'll say crazy things in my name.
Did you have to pay them?
No, they I'm not sure who it was, but it was for some reason, I don't know, I got my account back.
Great.
And then I was just, I don't know, to some degree it's like just sort of, I just started tweeting for fun, really. And my early tweets were quite crazy. As I was trying to explain, like, the arc of insanity is short, in that it's not very steep, because it started off insane. And so if it's still insane, it's, it hasn't changed that much. Yeah, and I don't know, it seemed kind of fun to, as I think I've said this before, it's like, some people use their hair to express myself. I use Twitter.
I had a lot of friends of mine try to talk me out of starting a rocket company because they thought it was crazy, and one friend of mine made me watch a video of rockets blowing up. And there were just lots of people that thought it was a really crazy idea, and there was some people that had tried to start rocket companies, not succeeded, and they tried to talk me out of it. And but the thing is that the premise for talking me out of it was, well, we think you're going to lose the money that you invest. And I was like, well, that was my expectation anyway.
Right.
So I don't really mind if I lose. I mean, I might, but I mean, it's not. It's not like I was trying to figure out the rank-ordered best way to invest money,
Right.
and on that basis, chose space.
Right.
It's not like that's. I thought, wow.
You weren't looking at like money market bonds, AAA bonds,
Right, exactly.
rocket company.
Like,
you weren't like
do real estate.
Yeah,
Invest in shoemaking, anything. And whoa, space is highest ROI. That is not what that wasn't the premise. I just thought that it was important that humanity expand beyond Earth, and we weren't doing that. So maybe there was something I could do to kind of spur that on.
Well, I was just saying that you want to take a moment to appreciate things in life and the sensations. Food's incredible, and there's just so many good things that you can experience. Some of them cost nothing, really. Have a walk in nature or just a nice meal, and it's like, wow, that's pretty great, And we should take a moment to appreciate these little things, the big things, the things that move your heart. I think that's probably the meaning of life, as close a definition as I can think. So you want to have like a good competitive forcing function so that you have to make the product better, or you'll lose. Like if you don't make the product better and improve the product for the end consumer, then that company should have relatively less prosperity compared to a company that makes better products. Now the car industry, is actually pretty competitive, so that's good. So then the good thing about a competitive industry is then if you make a product that's better, it's going to do better in the marketplace.
How much of your success do you attribute to having really audacious goals, or versus just not being focused on the short term, money coming in, or investors?
Unfortunately, one does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company. The most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it. And have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
There may be some merit in having some longer-term family ownership, at least a portion of it, so it acts as a positive influence. This is still something I'm thinking about, but acting as a positive influence in the long term, so that the company kind of does proper long-term things. If you look at what happened also in Silicon Valley with HP, I think it's quite sad. And that to some degree is because there was much diminished influence by the Hewlett and Packard families.
Right.
I think they should have prevailed in their, where they were opposed to the merger that took place at one point, and I think they were right, actually.
Right. And looking to the future for SpaceX, is there an IPO plan for this year?
No, there's no IPO plan.
No.
Let's say running a public company does have its drawbacks.
So you're not in a hurry?
No.
Okay.
I mean, in the case of Tesla and SpaceX, we had to raise capital, and we had kind of a complex equity structure that needed to be resolved by going public, and so I felt we kind of needed to do that in those two cases. We don't have to do that in SpaceX. I think there's a good chance we will at some point in the future, but SpaceX's objectives are super long term, and the market is not. So I'm a bit worried that if we did go public, certainly if we went public too soon, that that market pressure would force us to do short-term things and abandon kind of long-term projects.
Like going to Mars.
Right, going to Mars is very long-term.
Yes.
When I was in high school, I thought I would most likely be doing physics at a particle accelerator. So that's what I was, physics and computers. I mean, I got distinctions in two areas, in physics and computer science, and those were, some of my two best subjects. And then I thought, okay, well, I want to figure out what's the nature of the universe, and so I'd, go try to working with people, banging particles together to see what happens. And then it sort of things went along, and then the superconducting super collider got canceled in the US, and that actually was like, whoa, what if I am working at a collider, it's been all these years, and then the government just cancels it?
Wow.
And then I was like, I'm not going to do that. So it's like, so we roll back a little. I was trying to figure out when I was a kid, I had like this existential crisis, and I was about 12 years old or something, and I was like, well, what does the world mean? What's it all about? We're living some meaningless existence. And then I made the mistake of reading Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, and I'm like, whoa, don't do that. Not if you need to be a little older, I think. No, actually, lately, these days, I sort of reread it, so I was like, he's not that bad. He's got issues, no question about it, but it's, anyway. But then I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams, which is like quite a good book on philosophy, I think. And it was like, okay, we don't really know what the answer is, obviously. But the universe is the answer. And really, what are the questions we should be asking to better understand the nature of the universe? And so then, to the degree that we expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we'll better be able to ask the questions. And understand why we're here or what it's all about. And so we should sort of take the set of actions that are most likely to result in us understanding what questions to ask about the nature of the universe. I always thought we would fail, so this is it's all upside. I thought maybe we had a 10% chance of reaching orbit starting out. So then people thought, when we started SpaceX, they said, oh, you're going to fail. So I agree. I think we probably will fail. Yeah. But it's worth trying anyway. Yeah. Yeah.
How's that for honesty, huh?
Yeah, they said I'd lose lose all the money from PayPal. I was like, well, you're probably right. And we almost did. We had first 3 launches of Falcon 1 didn't work. Then the 4th one, we scraped together some parts, and that one worked. And if that one hadn't worked, that would have been it for us. So, I really believe in the future of space, and I think it's important that we become a spacefaring civilization and be out there among the stars. And I think that's one of the things that makes people excited about the future. And we want the things that are in science fiction novels and movies not to be science fiction forever. We want them to be real one day.
If you think of like what is education, like you're basically downloading data and algorithms into your brain, and it's actually amazingly bad in conventional education because like it shouldn't be like this huge chore. So you're making it way better. But I mean, I think a lot of the things that I would say you've probably heard 100 times, and in fact are if not doing. Like the more you can gamify the process of learning, the better. Like for my kids, I do not have to encourage them to play video games.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have to like pry them from their hands, like crack.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's like drop that crack needle.
Yeah, yeah. You have that problem at your house too.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
The crack is addictive. Yeah.
So it's it's to the degree that you can make somehow learning like a game, then it's better. And I think unfortunately, like a lot of education is very vaudevillian. You've got someone standing up there kind of lecturing at people, and they've done the same lecture 20 years in a row, and they're not very excited about it. And that lack of enthusiasm, is conveyed to the students. They're not very excited about it. They don't know why they're there. Like, why are we learning this stuff? We don't even know why. In fact, I think a lot of things people learn, probably there's no point in learning them. Because they never use them in the future.
Because who's going to launch a rocket into space? I mean, that's just like, yeah, exactly. That never happens.
Well, you have to say, like, people, I think, don't stand back and say, well, why are we teaching people these things? And we should tell them probably why we're teaching these things. Because a lot of kids are just in school kind of puzzled as to why they're there. And I think if you can explain the why of things, then that makes a huge difference to people's motivation. Yeah. Then they understand purpose.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty important.
In thinking about the various problems that we're facing, or what would most likely change the future, when they were in college, there were sort of 5 things that I thought would be. I thought these were actually these. I would not regard this as a profound insight, but rather an obvious one. The internet would fundamentally change humanity because it's like humanity would become more of a superorganism because the internet is like a nervous system. Now suddenly any part of the human organisms anywhere would have access to all the information.
Amazing.
Instantly.
Neuralink.
Well, like imagine if you didn't have a nervous system, you wouldn't know what's going on. Your fingers wouldn't know what's going on. Or your toes wouldn't know what's going on. You'd have to do it by diffusion. And the way information used to work was really by diffusion. One human would have to call another human. Or write them. Yes, like if it was a letter, you would have to write a letter. You'd have to hand that letter to another human. That would be carried through a bunch of things. Find another person would give it to you. Extremely slow diffusion. And if you wanted access to books, if you did not have a library, you don't have it. That's it. Right. So now you have access to all the books instantly, and if you can be in a remote, mountaintop jungle location or something, and have access to all of humanity's information, if you've got a link to the internet, this is a fundamental, profound change. You want to make something beautiful. I mean, you want to trigger whatever fundamental aesthetic algorithms are like in your brain. You have, I think, some intrinsic elements that represent beauty, and that trigger the emotion of appreciation of beauty in your mind. And I think that these are actually relatively consistent among people. I mean, not completely. Some people not everyone likes the same thing, but there's a lot of commonality. But I think it is important to combine aesthetic design with functionality. Like the thing that's, like if you say what was really hard about, say, the Model S or the Model X, was to combine aesthetics and utility. So to balance the two. You can make a car look very good by giving it sort of certain proportions, like making it sort of low and slim, but if you do that, the utility is significantly affected. To make a sports car look good is relatively easy, but to make a sedan look good or an SUV look good is quite difficult. Really pay attention to the little details, the nuances of design and shape and form and function, and just the way it looks in different lights. And
when something's off, the little thing, how do you experience that?
It drives me bananas. Yeah. The problem is, like, if you can train yourself to pay attention to the tiny details. I think almost anyone can. Although this is a very much double-edged sword, because then you see all the little details, and then little things drive you crazy. But like most people they don't consciously see the small details, but they do subconsciously see them. Like you sort of, your mind takes in a gestalt of the overall, an overall impression, and you know if something is appealing or not, even though you may not be able to point out exactly why. And it's a summation of these many small details.
So most of us experience it as I think that's ugly, or I think that's beautiful, or like, wow, that's elegant, but you can't break it down. You mentioned something in passing, like you can train yourself in this, though?
Yeah, you can train yourself, I think. You can make yourself pay attention to why. You're essentially bring the subconscious awareness into conscious awareness.
God, I wish I could do that. How do you do that?
just pay really close attention.
Almost like a meditation on the object, and trying to find the details, like, why do I not like this? Is that what?
Yeah, just look closely and carefully.
The physics training is a very good training, where it's a good framework for reasoning, where you're trained to think about first principles and reason from there. And that means boiling things down to the most fundamental truths, and then connecting those truths in a way to try to understand how reality is. Because physics has this problem where they're trying to figure out things that are totally counterintuitive. Yeah. And so they had to have a framework for getting there. Like quantum mechanics is incredibly counterintuitive, but it's true. And so so physics developed a framework for figuring out things that aren't obvious. And that's why I think it's a lot of advice, but it's the right framework.
If you think about the future, you want a future that's better than the past. Yeah. And so if we had something like the Hyperloop, I think that would be like cool. Like you'd look forward to the day that was working, and it's something like that. Even if it only was in one place, from LA to San Francisco or New York to DC or something like that, then it would be cool enough that it would be like a tourist attraction, it would be like a ride or something. So even if some of the initial assumptions didn't work out and the economics didn't work out quite as one expected, it would be like cool enough to be like, I want to journey that place just to ride on that thing. That would be pretty cool. And so that's, I think, how, if you come up with a new technology, it should feel like that. You should really, like, if you told it to an objective person, would they look forward to the day that thing became available? And be like, it'd be pretty exciting to do something like that. Or an aircraft. Like, I thought it was really disappointing when the Concorde was taken out of commission and there was no supersonic transport available. And of course, the 787 has had some issues. But the thing is, the 787, even in the best case scenario, is only a slightly better version of the 777. And it's like, okay, not that exciting.
Just in general, critical thinking is good. Examining whether you have the correct axioms, are the most applicable axioms, does the logic necessarily connect, and then what are the range of probable outcomes? Outcomes are usually not deterministic; they're a range, and so you want to figure out what those probabilities are, and make sure, ideally, that you're the house. It's fine to take. It's fine to gamble, so long as you're the house.
I don't think everyone needs to go, try to solve like some big world-changing problem. I mean, I think that, like, I really think, like, we should just think, like, are we doing something that's useful to the world? Like, if you're doing something useful, that's great. I just think that, like, just sort of a usefulness optimization is like, that's like a really good thing. If you've done something that's useful to your fellow human beings, you've done a really good thing, and people should feel proud of doing that. It doesn't always have to be something that's going to change the world. I mean, sometimes the world should just keep going in a particular direction.
Help the world.
It might be going in the right direction, and I mean, in a lot of ways, the world is, and we are in great shape. In that, if you look at, say, violent crimes, per capita in the world, it's at an all-time low. We're actually quite prosperous, and compared to history, I think there's a lot of things to feel good about in terms of how the world is today. Access to information is incredible. I mean, anyone with like a $100 device has access to basically all the world's information, which is an incredible thing. So I honestly, I just think like the best thing for people to try to do is say like, hey, what is something that I can do that would really be useful to the world, and just do that, and it's great.
First of all, my goal is not disruption for the sake of disruption. I really think there's some important things we have to solve in order for the future to be good. I would say like my sort of algorithm or optimization is like, okay, what set of things do we need to do to ensure that increase the probability that the future is going to be good? And so if we have to solve sustainable energy, this is tautological. If we do not solve sustainable energy, then we have unsustainable energy. Then it's just a matter of time before before civilization collapses. We must, even if there was not an environmental issue, since the availability of oil is limited, this is not something we can sustain long term. My original interest in electric vehicles was actually not environmental. It was out of concern, just studying physics, and I'm like, wait a second, we need to transition to solar electric, or we're going to have a problem, and we run out of oil, civilization collapses. That's a problem. Now, of course, the environmental concerns have added to the urgency. Because the more CO2 we put in the oceans and atmosphere, the more we increase the probability that something will go wrong. Like I said, like things are much more probability as opposed to certainty, but I think it's an unwise experiment to dramatically increase the CO2 in the atmosphere and oceans. Given that we know we need to transition anyway because we'll run out of oil. So why run that experiment? It's not. It doesn't make any sense. We know we have to transition to a sustainable energy economy. Then let's just get on with it. Let's just get on with it and not run the crazy experiment and see what happens if the atmosphere has 2,000 ppm CO2. This is crazy.
Yeah, I think I wanted to spur ideas and thinking about the long-term need to capture carbon. I think this is one of those things that's going to take a while to figure out what the right solution is. And especially to figure out what the best economics are for CO2 removal, and all the think through all the consequences. You don't want the cure to be worse than the disease. Sometimes people say, "Well, just plant a bunch of trees." I'm like, that's not so easy. Like
a trillion trees.
Sure, exactly. And then you got to like, okay, well, you need to get fertilizer. You're going to water them. Where's the water going to come from? What habitat are you potentially destroying where the trees used to be? It's not just it's a no-brainer of just go plant a bunch of trees.
But it's not to say that's not a good, viable option.
We should plant some trees. I'm in favor of planting trees. It's just not a question of like, okay, there are like vast sections of like the Sahara Desert or some large barren areas, very dry areas in the U.S. Where you could in theory plant a lot of trees, but you're going to need a lot of water, and you're going to need you're going to have to cultivate them. It's not like they don't just throw some seeds on the ground.
We'll drop them from orbit.
And I mean, so just I think it'd be good to sort of kind of frame the debate and understand, okay, what things are really going to move the needle? How much are they going to move the needle? If we're talking about getting tens or hundreds of billions of tons of carbon, in what form will that carbon be? Will it be stable over time? And like I said, what is it going to cost humanity to do? However it's paid for, what is it going to cost? What's the thing that's going to be most affordable?
Look for evidence of exceptional ability. So it's not, or at least aspirationally, like sometimes these things get messed up in recruiting, or the recruiting filter ends up being wrong. Like I sometimes wonder with Tesla, if Nikola Tesla applied to Tesla, would we even give him an interview? It's not clear. This guy came from like some weird college somewhere in Eastern Europe. He's got some odd mannerisms. Now, we don't know if we should give him an interview. Like, I worry that that's actually what we do instead of like, it should be like, man, Nikola Tesla, this kid's super smart. What does he want? We'll pay him anything. That should be that should be the reaction if Nikola Tesla applies, to Tesla, ironically. But I can tell you the intent is we're looking for evidence of exceptional ability, and it really doesn't matter if you went to graduate high school or college or anything. We're just looking for evidence of exceptional ability, such that it would be a good predictor for doing exceptional things at SpaceX.
Fully considered cost actually just means that if there are, you want to look at both the benefits and the cost actually. So if in sequestering carbon or removing it from the atmosphere or oceans has some perhaps some environmental impact, which might be small, but it's not negative. That certainly needs to be taken into account. And then by the same token, if what's done is in extracting carbon is a useful product from which you can generate revenue, then that should count too.
All right.
So I don't know, I'm just sort of saying for argument's sake, like let's say you could create, construction material, like
cement.
Cement,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Which we
cement,
I'll talk about that later.
Or some kind of useful rocks that are useful, or sand, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Something that's useful for construction. Then you could say, okay, well, this is what we could sell it for, and then just fully consider pros and cons, and say, okay, this is what, if we need to pay to have it done in the future, which we probably will have to do, then what's the lowest net cost?
If you want another amazing Elon Musk video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I wake up every morning. Espresso keep me going. I wake up